Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of a number of Jeffrey Epstein's associates. This includes former President Clinton, President Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Gates, as well as Prince Andrew. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. So what we're going to be looking at first is a very brief clip of former President Clinton being confronted about his connections with Epstein. Let's just jump right in.
Mr. Clinton, any comments on the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein? No.
So first you hear him being told no, and then you get this very broad smile. You get the wrinkles next to the eyes. That's what people associate with a very genuine smile. Now, do I think he's actually feeling happy here? I find that very unlikely, despite how authentic the smile looks. Because President Clinton has always used that as his way to connect with people. His smile is something that he knows how to use. So being confronted like that, rather than looking stressed, rather than looking irritated, he has this smile on his face. But it gets more interesting. Let's keep going. So he keeps the smile on his face, which he actually didn't have before he was asked the question. So he's keeping that mask up. He's keeping his eyebrows up because he wants you to hear, I think the evidence is clear. We're going to talk a little bit about that evidence in just a minute. But for now, let's keep going. And then he looks back with that smile on his face. Now, this is meant to intimidate. And I don't mean physically intimidate, but emotionally intimidate somebody. You asked me this question, and I remember that you're the one that asked, and I still feel fine about it. You did not affect me. So that's the way that I interpret that look right there. He's really looking the journalist right in the eye, really trying to make sure he makes eye contact before walking off. What an unsettling look that he has after being asked about his connection with Jeffrey Epstein. The fact that a smile was his reaction to this speaks volumes and is also unsettling, because a lot of people, when confronted with information like this, if they had a connection, would probably feel some discomfort hearing his name. But former President Clinton showed zero signs of discomfort. And it's also possible that he's able to mask it extremely well. But there are a couple of things I want to point out, because when there were documents that were unsealed during the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, one of those documents said that President Clinton traveled to Thailand with Jeffrey Epstein. Nothing wrong with Thailand. It's a beautiful country. I'm not saying anything negative about Thailand, but it is known for some unsavory things if you go with unsavory people. So the idea that he went with Jeffrey Epstein to Thailand and has a number of admitted flights that he's taken on his plane. There's a lot about President Clinton that's in these documents. Now we're going to watch some footage of President Trump in Palm Beach, Florida in 1992. He's at a party with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the body language of Jeffrey Epstein is quite different than I expected. Look how closed off he is. I mean, I'm sure anybody that's been to a party has seen people, or maybe you've experienced this, where people are standing around with their arms crossed. That is not a sign that you're having a good time or that you're comfortable at all. So right now, Jeffrey Epstein looks tremendously uncomfortable. Whereas if you'll watch President Trump, he's pretty much the opposite. He seems to be enjoying himself. But we're gonna watch this. I'll explain more as we go. See, there was an awkward interaction right there. He was trying to speak to President Trump. President Trump turned around to speak with somebody else, and then Jeffrey Epstein basically acted like he wasn't trying to talk to him because he didn't get his attention. He didn't touch him. He didn't try to get his attention by grabbing his arm or putting his hand on his back or something like that. He didn't physically try to get his attention. He just gave up. And I think this shows that Jeffrey Epstein is probably a pretty awkward guy. So as you see, he's still standing there with his arms crossed, still looking very uncomfortable. If you saw President Trump on the campaign trail, that dance he just did is exactly the same as the one that he still does. But as you can see, he's trying to have a good time. He's hanging out. He's talking to people. He leans in. He's probably someone who enjoys to party, it looks like. You see him biting his lip right now. He's feeling very intense. So as you can see, President Trump is leaning in, trying to talk to everybody, trying to make contact with people, whereas Jeffrey Epstein seems a lot more reserved, a lot more uncomfortable. See, he's excited about the idea that NBC is there. See, moving around as much as he can, pointing at everything, he wants to be seen. He wants to be noticed at this party. Whereas Jeffrey Epstein continues to try to hide. He continues to just sit uncomfortably, closing his body off right now. And it's not that people can't feel comfortable with their arms crossed, but in a situation like this, it suggests discomfort. This looks like someone who's uncomfortable. And look at the smile going off and on Jeffrey Epstein's face. Once again, discomfort. He's trying to laugh. He's trying to smile. He's trying to get along and have a good time. But it's not an authentic smile. You see how quickly it comes and goes? So you saw President Trump say she's hot, and he had very little reaction to that. He tried to nod to it. Just seems very awkward and uncomfortable. Now, see, this was a reaction that most people would interpret as he's just doubled over in laughter. But I think it's more that the discomfort makes him hide his face. That he's wanting to show I'm having a reaction. He's trying to show President Trump, I'm having a reaction to what you're saying, and it's so funny. So he's leaning over. But in a lot of ways, that's so he can't see his genuine reactions, so he's overreacting to this. Because his body language is not consistent with someone who's having a good time. And see, he faces away. This is a way to get out of social situations. What we're looking at right here is someone who is very, very awkward and very uncomfortable in these kind of situations. So the interesting thing about watching them together is it seems like, based on what we're seeing, is that President Trump just wants to have a good time. The way he does that is making sure everybody else around him is laughing, having a good time, whereas Jeffrey Epstein seems deeply uncomfortable from what I'm observing. Here at Dr. G Explains, one of my major goals is to help you identify and spot deception. That's why I'm proud to introduce today's sponsor, Ground News. I'm someone who looks at the news every single day, and I'm endlessly frustrated by the amount of bias in the mainstream media. The mainstream media tends to try to blur the truth. They want you to see the world through their lens, which can be incredibly biased. It can almost be overwhelming with the amount of bias that we deal with. Ground News is both an app and a website that compiles over 50,000 news sources to give you the tools to analyze the news yourself. Let's take this recent story about Trump criticizing former allies over Epstein-related accusations. This story has over 103 sources covering it, with 31 on the left, 37 on the center, and 20 on the right. When we go down, we can see the headlines of each source to analyze how each side frames it. For example, the left is using headlines like, Trump lashes out at backers over Epstein debacle. I don't want their support anymore. While the right's using headlines like, Trump compares Jeffrey Epstein hoax to Russiagate, blasts past supporters. Ground News helps readers look beyond mainstream narratives and uncover patterns in the way today's news frames recent issues or even fails to cover them in the first place. Check it out by scanning this QR code or by going ground.news/Dr. G. My viewers get 40% off unlimited access to their Vantage plan, whether you subscribe for yourself or gift it to someone you know. Ground News is independent and subscriber funded, so by subscribing, you're not only getting a great product, you are directly supporting this channel. All right, let's get back to the analysis. Now we're going to watch part of an interview from TV Talk with Ghislaine Maxwell.
So they wake you up at 6, and you can go to breakfast, which consists of a cereal and a fruit.
So one thing we're already noticing, there's a lot of stress here. Now, she's the one who is a socialite, and even behind bars, people can still sort of act like themselves, but she's touching her lips, she's moving around, her hair is disorganized. There's something about her right now that seems very distressed, actually, as she's talking about life in prison, but not in a way that we oftentimes see with people that are in prison, because if you watch my videos, I do a ton of true crime. So this actually stands out as a little unusual, honestly.
A cereal and a fruit, a piece of fruit, generally. And then
you see her blink rates picking up, more and more stress. There's something going on in her head that really seems to be stressing her out as she's talking about her morning routine.
You have to make your bed sort of military style. So there's nothing that's sticking out or whatever. It has to be a prescribed way, otherwise you can to trouble.
We're going to skip around a little bit, but this is the beginning of the interview. Her baseline is so strange. She seems so uncomfortable. She just can't seem to sit still. And maybe she was like this before, but I would be surprised if this is how she presented before she was incarcerated. So here's me with my conspiracy hat on. I have zero evidence for this, what I'm about to say. It's just a feeling that I've got based on the rhythm and the way that she speaks. I do wonder if she's trying to get a message out to somebody. I do wonder if there's things that she's saying that are in a sense coded, that somebody else will understand what she means, but the rest of us don't. There's things that she says, the way that she says them, and that's the way that it comes across, as though she's trying to tell somebody something specific. Once again, that is based in nothing other than that's what it seems like to me. I'm not saying that that's true. I have no evidence of that. And I'll tell you, anytime I don't have evidence for what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you it's just very strongly my opinion on this, but it is nothing more than just the way that it seems to me. Now let's jump ahead to something more relevant that she talks about.
So I wish that I had been more successful at moving on, because I became a banker. So I should have, moved on completely. At the time, I wouldn't have had a problem introducing people to my friends to him, because I didn't know that he was so awful.
All right, so now she's talking about how awful Jeffrey Epstein is. She's saying, I didn't know. She starts laughing, and this is a way to self-soothe. She's rubbing her eyes, she's laughing, as she's trying to tell what, by my estimation, is very much a lie. She can't get it out without laughing and without doing things to soothe herself, because that's oftentimes we look at when people are trying to be deceptive. How much do they need to soothe themselves because they feel uncomfortable with the lie they're telling, or they're afraid that people aren't going to believe it, that sort of thing.
It was so awful. I mean, obviously now, really, looking back with hindsight, of course, but at the time, I mean, he had lots of friends. I mean, he was friendly with just about everybody you can imagine. There was no reason to imagine that he was someone of interest to people.
This is another thing, that a very particularly phrased, very interesting statement by her. Listen to this again.
I mean, he had lots of friends. I mean,
He had lots of friends. Start stroking her cheek. Once again, that's a very strong sign of trying to pacify oneself. So as she's saying this, she's feeling discomfort for sure.
Friendly with just about everybody you can imagine.
Friendly with leaves a gap, trying to find the right way to phrase it, because I think she's trying to be very careful with her words right here. With just about everyone you could imagine.
Friendly with just about everybody you can imagine. There was no reason to imagine that he was someone of interest to people.
So basically, because of the people he was associating with, you should trust him, or you should believe that I trusted him because of who he was associating with. Very interesting. And that's the kind of thing that makes people continue to go, well, there's probably some kind of blackmail list. And like this all seems too coincidental. And he obviously was very well connected. We know he has more connections than just the people I'm covering today. Now she's going to be talking about a well-known photograph of Prince Andrew with Virginia Giuffre.
It's a fake. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's real for a second. In fact, I'm sure it's not. There's never been an original. And further, there's no photograph. Right? And I've only ever seen a photocopy of it. I don't
So she starts speaking very strongly. It's fake. It's basically saying, I completely disavow this.
believe it happened.
And now she says, I don't believe it happened.
And it's certainly the way as described.
Certainly the way as described. So it's getting weaker and weaker. If you ask somebody to repeat a lie, it gets harder and harder to do. So the first time you lie, sometimes you can get it out, but she's continuing to talk about it. And each time she's saying something, it's getting weaker and weaker, which is showing she's being deceptive. I do not believe that she thinks that this is a fake. There's nothing about her body language or her statements that make me think that that's in fact true.
Photograph, right? And I've only ever seen a photocopy of it. I don't believe it happened. And it's certainly the way as described.
There she is putting her hair behind her ear. We're seeing her ventilate her hair. She's very uncomfortable right now.
It would have been impossible. I don't have any memory of going to tramp. Certainly not an outfit that I would have worn.
And now you see her rubbing her hands together. There's something about this picture that really distresses her more than some of the other things she's talked about, which is very interesting to me. So I guess the relationship with Prince Andrew, something about that dynamic, that brings her a lot of distress when talking about this, I suspect. So as we watch this and as we see what I believe are lies, that creates a problem if she wants to speak in front of Congress, because at that point she has now impeached her credibility, and there's going to be somewhat less value unless she's able to give some very specifics that can be evidenced elsewhere. If she can do that, if all it is talk and she's just explaining things, that might go somewhere, but it probably won't go far. If she's able to provide evidence and they can back that up and confirm it elsewhere, then that's about the only way that she's going to get some kind of reputation where people will believe what she has to say. So if you've been watching my videos, you've probably seen that I recently analyzed Bill Gates talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and it was a really wild interview. But this is a different interview. I wanted to see if he had different body language. Let's just jump right in.
Now, one of the issues that's dogged you is that of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you regret the relationship that you maintained with him against Melinda's advice and wishes?
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time. But
obviously, there's a lot of discomfort we're seeing. He's rocking in his chair back and forth, closing his eyes. We tend to rock as a way to soothe ourselves, just like a rocking chair. If you think about that, like rocking does help us feel calmer. When he closed his eyes talking about this, there's a lot that he's thinking about that he doesn't like. A ton of discomfort here. Bill Gates is just emanating discomfort in this interview.
Melinda's advice and wishes.
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time.
And you're going way back in time. He made that same point previously. He wants people to know this isn't recent. This is so long ago. We need to just forget about it and move on. This is too long ago to talk about.
But yeah,
new audience.
And you see both shoulders go up. Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't know what to say.
We'll say for the,
And you're seeing this mouth, this expression on his mouth right here. This is disapproval. He disapproves of having to respond to these questions.
Going way back in time. But yeah,
new audience.
I will say for the, over 100th time, yeah, I shouldn't have had dinners.
Now, you listen to the Listen to when the comes in.
Over 100th time, yeah, I shouldn't have had
showing a face of disapproval right afterward.
Dinners with him.
And then he says dinners with him, does this again, showing disapproval, but also as a way of punctuating what he's saying I'm not going to say anything else.
100th time, yeah, I shouldn't have had dinners with him.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. I mean, No, I had dinner with him.
So then the laughter comes out, the smiles come out, trying to self-soothe. There's a lot here. There's an extreme amount of discomfort. And it's interesting that he doesn't just reply very simply, no, I don't know anything about that. I'm not aware that he's done that to anybody. He didn't do it to me. There's so much discomfort when this question's asked.
People, is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. I mean, No, I had dinner with...
You see him shaking his head, leaning forward as though it's a crazy question. He's cocking his head. He's trying to suggest that this question doesn't make sense. So that's what you're seeing. You're trying to... It's an attempt to look confused. It's not a real look of confusion, but it's what he thinks looking confused is going to be like. Watch this right here.
I mean, No, I had dinner with him, and that's all.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
Now, that is such an incredibly fascinating response. So you regret the relationship, the acquaintance. He says that I had dinner with him. So there's other aspects of that relationship that he doesn't regret. He's not saying, I wish I'd never met him. He's saying, I wish I hadn't had dinner with him. It's such a peculiar way to respond to a question like this.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
Mm. And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
there never was any relationship of any kind.
Now, what he's saying is there's no relationship between the foundation and Epstein. He's not saying that he and Epstein didn't have any sort of relationship. He's saying there's no relationship as far as business goes. So just to clarify what he meant at that point, and that I think is true. You can see he looks a lot more confident saying that than what he just said before.
Relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
there never was any relationship of any kind.
Okay. How different a response. There never was any relationship of any kind. That's how he responded very clearly, concisely, and directly. to something that was absolutely no connection between his foundation and Jeffrey Epstein.
And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
There never was any relationship of any kind.
Let's compare that to what we already heard earlier.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. I mean, no, I had dinner with him, and that's all.
Now the last segment we're going to watch is part of Prince Andrew's interview with the BBC talking about Jeffrey Epstein. This is a pretty wild one.
He was your guest as well. In 2000, Epstein was a guest at Windsor Castle and at Sandringham. He was brought right into the heart of the royal family at your invitation.
But certainly at my invitation, not at the royal family's invitation. But
now, one of the first things you're going to notice is that his chin is very down. That covers our neck. Our neck is very vulnerable, so when we have our neck exposed, we feel comfortable. When we're hiding it, we probably feel a bit more defensive. He really tucks his neck in a lot. You're going to notice that throughout this interview.
remember that it was his girlfriend that was the key element in this. He was the, as it were, plus one to some extent in that aspect.
Am I right in thinking you threw a birthday party for Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, at Sandringham?
No, it was a shooting weekend.
Now look at the position of his head right here.
Maxwell at Sandringham.
So he's facing away from the interviewer. And that's intentional. It helps us feel disconnected so we can lie and be deceptive more easily. Watch as he starts to address her.
No, it was a
So he moves his eyes but doesn't move his head. No, it was a shooting weekend. So you can also see there's some sadness in the brows. He's feeling very uncomfortable at this point, and engaging and answering directly looks like it's too much for him. So right now you're seeing what appears to be a lot of deception, actually.
A shooting weekend.
A shooting weekend.
Just a straightforward shooting weekend.
Now, sometimes we shake our head for emphasis. This looks like a no, so it's almost like he's disagreeing with himself. It was a straightforward shooting weekend. I'm not so sure that I believe that.
No, it was a shooting weekend.
A shooting weekend.
Just a straightforward shooting weekend.
But during
And then you saw it quickly blinking right afterwards.
these times that he was a guest at Windsor Castle, at Sandringham, the shooting weekend,
Yeah.
we now know.
You'll also notice with his hands, he starts to steeple. This is a way to appear to be an expert, but he's not feeling confident. So he goes from steepling to rubbing his hands together. Watch this right here.
The shooting weekend.
Yeah.
We now know that he was and had been procuring young girls for sex trafficking.
We now know that. At the time, there was no indication to me or...
As he keeps talking, you're seeing him move back further. He's protecting his neck as well as trying to gain some distance. These are very uncomfortable questions.
anybody else that was what he was doing. And certainly
And then you see the blink rate start picking up.
that was what he was doing. And certainly when I saw him either in the United States, when I saw him in the United States, or when I was staying in his houses in the United States, there was no indication, absolutely no indication.
All right, you see the eyes closing. So when we blink faster, that's a way to start to soothe ourselves. It's because we're feeling more stressed. And then as he's closing his eyes, he's shielding himself from seeing a reaction. He doesn't really want to see how the journalist is going to react because it feels uncomfortable, because he knows I might not be believable. But you can see continued defensiveness throughout.
Either in the United States, when I saw him in the United States, or when I was staying in his houses in the United States, there was no indication, absolutely no indication. And if there was...
So as I pointed out earlier, when people repeat lies, they get more and more uncomfortable. So sometimes the lies change. They get a little bit softer. So absolutely no indication. And then if there was. So if you let him continue to talk, he will probably continue to lessen how certain he is of this.
No indication. And if there was...
Then a big swallow afterwards. No indication, but if there was, then a swallow. Now he's saying something that's making him uncomfortable. Such a disjointed way to respond to this.
You've been on his private plane.
Yes,
You've been to stay on his private island.
yes,
You've stayed at his home in Palm Beach.
yes,
You've visited Ghislaine Maxwell's house in Belgravia in London.
yes.
So
Visiting Ghislaine Maxwell's house, that's the one that he had the strongest reaction to, interestingly enough.
House in Belgravia in London.
Yes.
So in 2006, in May, an arrest warrant was issued for Epstein of a minor.
Yes.
In July, he was invited to Windsor Castle.
So he knew what was coming. As she started asking that, you're already seeing him position around, start to get uncomfortable, continuing to do things to try to soothe himself as he hears all this, because this is, once again, extremely uncomfortable.
In May, an arrest warrant was issued for Epstein for assault of a minor.
Yes.
In July, he was invited to Windsor Castle to your daughter, Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday. Why would you do that?
Because I was asking Ghislaine. But even so, at the time, I don't think...
Now look when he responds about Ghislaine. Watch this right here.
Why would you do that?
Because I was asking Ghislaine.
Because I was asking Ghislaine. He says it very quietly. He doesn't move his mouth much. He doesn't move his head at all. He's trying not to be seen. And this is what happens when the fight or flight system gets invoked, is that all of a sudden we try to hide, we try to freeze. And that's he's stuck in freeze exactly right now.
But even so...
Why would you do that?
Because I was asking Ghislaine. But even so, at the time, I don't think certainly I wasn't aware.
And you're also seeing this sort of fake concentration. He's furrowing his brow as though he needs to concentrate. When people concentrate, it typically looks a little bit more nuanced than that.
Some people think that he didn't take his own life.
Well, there again, I'm not one to be able to answer that question.
So much body language right there. Laughter, smiling, closing his eyes. The response is very similar to what Bill Gates said in the previous video that I did. I'll actually show that clip after this so that you can see it side by side. Really fascinating. But you can see just the palpable amount of discomfort. And you can see such a tremendous amount of relief, actually, when they talk about Jeffrey Epstein being dead.
Well, there again, I'm not one to be able to answer that question. I believe that centers around something to do with a bone in his neck, as to whether or not if that bone breaks or something. But I'm afraid to say I'm not an expert. I have to take what the coroner says, and he has ruled that it was suicide. So
he's dead.
Prince Andrew seems to say the wildest things when you give him space to just talk, because right now it seems that he has some doubt about how Jeffrey Epstein died, but is basically saying, well, I have to accept how the determination of the coroner came up with. Just fascinating, such a peculiar response. Now I'm going to show one last clip, just very briefly, of Bill Gates reacting to Jeffrey Epstein's death, because I find it fascinating how he reacted, as well as Prince Andrew.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Well, he's dead, so in general, you always have to be careful. I'm very proud.
So watching both of them talk about Jeffrey Epstein's death just fascinates me, because their reactions are so similar in a lot of ways. But anyway, let's go ahead and stop here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the behavior and body language that we've seen with people that we have known associated with Jeffrey Epstein. There's just so much to cover. I mean, what we saw from everybody is everybody had very different connections with Jeffrey Epstein and very different body language, obviously, when talking about him. So if you have anything else specific you want me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.